Savate. Savate was inspired by Africans. Savate is a French martial art that blends traditional boxing with dynamic kicking. It was developed in the 1800s, particularly in the port of Marseille. However, the kicks of Savate are as native to Savate as the French braid is to France. The kicks of Savate, much like the French braid, represent African contributions to French culture that has been forgotten over time. So in this video, I'd like to tell you about the African contribution to Savate. But first, smash my like button, leave your thoughts in the comment section, subscribe, and share the video. And if you want to support the channel and take your striking game to the next level while having fun doing so, then head on over to FOCUSBALL.com. So if you're ready to take your striking game to the next level, then visit us at FOCUSBALLs.com and get yourself a set of focus balls and dramatically improve footwork, timing, reflex, hand-eye coordination, and overall striking technique. Train every time, everywhere with the Focus Ball. Savate was a form of street fighting common in France in the 18th century. Its name means old shoe or boot. It was also called chasson by sailors in South France, especially in the port of Marseille. This was in reference to the slippers normally worn on ships. This style used exclusively kicking, while in the north, Savate was practiced with high kicks, open hand slaps, and in some cases, headbutts and grappling was also used by both. High kicks with open hand slaps, headbutts, and grappling. Where the hell have I heard that before? Let's put a pin in that. Savate was seen as the practice of thugs, as it was most popular with French gangs, and it was common to see Savate in bar fights. Let's make a note of that as well. According to historians, sailors learned these techniques from sea lions on their trips to countries of the Indian Ocean and the China Sea. Wait, what the fuck? Sea lions? What kind of an asshole? Just say who you learned it from. What the hell you mean you learned it from sea lions? These sailors were in constant trips between the two sides of the Atlantic because the French had territories in West Central Africa and even East Africa, as well as islands in the Caribbean. Savate would go from street fighting to a regulated sport in 1825 when Michael Sea Urchin, or whatever his name is, opened up the first school and codified Savate, aiming to create a more classy style. Then in 1832, his student, Charles Le Sea Urchin, combined what he learned from Michael with English boxing, giving us modern Savate. And yes, their last name is not Sea Urchin, but the people who taught them those techniques are not sea lions. So, yeah. Humanity originated in Africa, and Africans had hundreds of thousands of years to do all things the human body is capable of. So it is not surprising that all over Africa we find a variety of kicking arts. These kicking arts are usually a part of a cultural religious practice that involves music and dancing. I found that most often these dances serve as the equivalent of katas that improves one's footwork, strength, and stamina for the application of the martial kicking practice. It also serves as a means of channeling their ancestors or a higher power. East Africa. In East Africa, we have the art of merengue and its many cognate expressions. The merengue of La Réunion uses no punches but focuses mostly on kicks that are very similar to capoeira. They even do it to drums and have dancing as well. While the merengue of Madagascar uses punches as well. The merengue of Comoros consists of headbutting, grabbing, as well as punches and kicks, which is why it's considered one of the oldest forms. But there are many variations all over East Africa, including Mozambique and the other countries in the Indian Ocean, such as Mayotte, Mauritius, and Seychelles. West Africa. In Central West Africa, most prominent of these kicking arts is Ngolo, the mother of capoeira and many other arts in the diaspora. But quite literally, there are as many variations of Ngolo in West Central Africa as there are tribes, most notably in the Congo and Angola. These are predominantly focused on kicking, but there are tribes who mix in a wrestling style known as Luango, as well as slapboxing style known as Kandenka, and stick fighting from the Kunene region. Diaspora. The African diaspora in the West also have many variations of Ngolo, with capoeira being the most famous. But there's also knocking and kicking in North America, the ancestor of breakdancing and the Charleston. Knocking and kicking, like the name suggests, uses headbutts and kicks. It is not known for using wrestling and sticks, whereas capoeira has a stick form known as makulele, as well as a headbutting and wrestling form. There's also Ladja from Martinique, Juego de Mani from Cuba, which uses sticks, and Mekongo in Jamaica, which has a stick form known as Warwick. Exchange. The French Empire included many territories in Africa and the Caribbean. They include the Congo, which, as aforementioned, is the home of Ngolo kicking. It is also where you find Kunene stick fighting, Kandenka slapboxing, and Luango wrestling. The French also colonized Madagascar, Seychelles, Comoros, Mauritius, Mayotte, and Réunion, all of which are in the Indian Ocean, and all of these were dominated by various forms of merengue. Merengue was codified in 1675 in Madagascar. However, it had been a long-standing tradition for centuries. When the French colonized Madagascar and the surrounding islands, they used the enslaved merengue practitioners in prize fights for well over 100 years before the invention of Savate. They also had islands in the Caribbean, such as Martinique, where we find Ladja, which is much like capoeira. But we also have records of the French in Brazil during the early 1800s. At that time, capoeira had been associated with gangs and had been outlawed at one point. Now let's go back to some points that we made earlier. Savate was done mostly by sailors who learned it from countries in the Indian Ocean. Sometimes they'd add slapboxing to it, headbutting, and wrestling, and it was often done by street gangs in bar fights. For over 200 years, French sailors from the ports of Marseille had been exposed to the martial arts culture of the people of the Indian Ocean the Caribbean, and West Central Africa. These people practiced kicks, headbutts, grappling, and slapboxing, and many of them were in street gangs. So it's clear where this influence comes from, but instead they decided to say it came from sea lions. At least they didn't call them. They could have been like, we learned it from the French in Brazil. Now there are those who would claim it's the other way around, that French gymnastics influenced Brazilian capoeira. And there may be some truth to that, in that there is extensive records of French military personnel working as exercise instructors and teaching gymnastics in Brazil. And during the early 1900s, there was an attempt to reform capoeira and make it more white and classy. But this was the 1900s. If anything, it watered down capoeira's effectiveness as a martial art, making it more performance. But that's simply a case of learning something from someone, then coming back literally 100 years later and teaching their descendants your form of what you taught them 100 years ago. For example, the Japanese were in Brazil 100 years ago, teaching them jiu-jitsu. Now you have Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools in Japan. Conclusion. Moral of the story: white people love repackaging your shit and selling it back to you. Ask India. They literally did that to them. That's why they owe them, like $47 trillion? So I wouldn't have a problem with the cultural exchange at all. That's what makes the world go round. I think Jamaican Japanese is a great combination of culture. However, these dudes didn't say we learned it from niggas 200 years ago. They said we learned it from sea lions in the Indian Ocean. This is the same thing with buccaneers. Buccaneers are French outlaw pirates who cook in a style they learned from Jamaican Maroons, who they teamed up with to fight the Spanish during the golden age of piracy. This cooking style is actually where we get jerk chicken from. So a buccaneer is someone who cooks jerk on a buck-on grill. A buck-on grill is a native Jamaican invention. So the original buccaneers are the Jamaican Maroons, not French people. But they didn't tell you they learned it from black people, did they? With that, I advocate that we practice merengue and ngolo or capoeira or any of the many African kicking arts that inspired Savate. Stay tuned for the next one. Check out the backlog. Till next time. And if you like this video, you can head on over to my Patreon and sign up there, request the next video, or you can drop a super thanks so your comment can be seen and you can request the next video there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time. Peace.
Get ready to take your striking game to the next level with the Focus Ball. Dramatically improved footwork, timing, head movement, hand-eye coordination, reflex, and overall fight IQ. It's lightweight and extremely portable, so you can train every time, everywhere. When you don't have a coach to do mitt work, get a Focus Ball. When you don't have a heavy bag to hit, get a Focus Ball. When you don't have a sparring partner, get yourself a Focus Ball. And when you just want to have fun punching and kicking, get a Focus Ball. When you train with the Focus Ball, you train your eyes and your brain to read punches so that you can hit and not get hit, making this very simple device a must-have for all combat sports athletes and enthusiasts alike. So if you want to take your striking game to the next level, don't wait. Get the Focus Ball now.